Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about, yet again, this massive beast of a winter storm, blizzard, ice storm, severe weather maker. I mean, it's everything. And we are now starting to get into the second, if you will, phase of this winter storm across the central United States. We still have the worst, I guess the worst of the severe weather is ongoing right now as I'm recording this video. And the most of the snow across southeastern Canada and northeastern United States is still yet to occur. So this thing still has a little bit, quite a bit left to go. And there have been quite a bit of some large changes in the past, I would say 30 to, the last 24 to 30 hours. So before I get into this, I do like I say always at the beginning of each video, use a scroll bar. It's divided by region. You can see it's kind of these little chapters that pop up, and you can click on your region specifically, so you're not spending 30 minutes trying to watch the whole video when on your region I'm just talking about, just a few minutes. You're welcome to watch the whole video, obviously, if you would like. And you could also do this by clicking on a little blue numbers by the description box. You'll see the regions listed and little blue numbers. You can click on those, and it'll take you right to those sections. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the radar of the United States. So notice that this system right now may not look too impressive on the snowy side. It is starting to wind down across the Dakotas. However, you can see that there's a resurgence of significant moisture from the south, and this becomes pretty evident, especially as I play this forward. Notice that as I take this into Illinois, Indiana, we see this storm or this rain and this slug of massive moisture starting to get more and more vertical, and eventually this will backfire into the cold air. So this will provide a lot of snow for Minnesota, Wisconsin. Obviously, we have the severe weather going on right now across the south. We do have a little clipper across the northwestern United States, and looking at the list and of all the advisories and watches that are currently on the National Weather Service kind of scope, you could see it's quite significant, to say the least. We have ice storm warnings, winter storm watches, winter weather advisories, blizzard warnings, all of that good stuff. Not really, but all that stuff. So let's start off by looking at the northwestern United States. So let me take this back and where am I? There we go, her model. So let's take a look at this, and let's divide this into sections. So northwestern United States, again, as I mentioned yesterday, you guys are done with this storm. However, if you are watching from the northwest United States right now, the main areas that are still going to pick up precipitation are Idaho, Montana, and portions of northern Utah and Wyoming, and maybe extreme northeastern Colorado, northwestern Colorado, because of this little clipper that is coming down right now. Currently, you can see it is occurring mainly across Idaho and portions of Montana and Nevada. Into the coming hours, this thing will continue sliding through Idaho, into Utah, Salt Lake City, potentially picking up a few, maybe even a few inches of snow. I was going to say a few tenths of an inch, but it seems that it will be cold enough where this won't have a problem to accumulate. And you can see that by the time it passes through Utah into early tomorrow morning, right here, 11 a.m., December 15th. Let me see if I could slightly zoom in here without my image taking up a good portion. There we go, that works out. And notice that, this thing's pretty much done by tomorrow. And then later on, into Thursday and into Friday, really not much activity. Notice extreme, maybe eastern Wyoming and Montana, picking up a little bit of additional snow from that resurgence of moisture, from that precipitation as I was talking about across kind of the second phase of this winter storm. But you can see that, again, not really much of that making its way into the Montana, Wyoming area, and even the stuff that does is really not going to be that awfully significant. So in terms of total additional snowfall, notice across Idaho, Utah, some light 1 to 2, maybe some 3 to 4 inch pockets, especially across the higher elevated areas, the peaks and what's not. So notice across Montana and Wyoming, we still have quite a bit of snow that could be falling, so that is definitely something to note. And again, quite a bit, meaning 2 to 4 inches, and honestly, it seems like the good majority of that will be occurring in a short term. Beyond that, you guys are basically going to be stuck in a quieter pattern. If I jump to the GFS model, which takes us a bit further out, beyond just 48 hours, notice the next area of activity that we really have across this area is on Saturday and Sunday of this upcoming weekend, and that comes in the form of this kind of hybrid clipper type, and this will be mainly affecting southern Canada, Alberta, British Columbia, and into Saskatchewan. But other than that, you can see it kind of peters out as it heads into the northwest. And then once we get really far out in terms of the forecast, we could see some sort of activity starting to brew again. So, the pattern looks active, and there looks to be a lot of cold air in between now and the next period of activity. So that's the main focus, I guess, just the cold air that will be invading the northwest and the limited precipitation. I'll be making a separate video about this, which is why I'm not focusing too much on this, but the cold air could be quite ridiculous, as you could see, especially as we head towards Christmas time. Let's now move on towards the southwestern United States. Again, most of you guys here across the southwest, if you're watching the storm, you know, the one that's making all the headlines, it was obviously across your area just a few days ago, but that's mainly done. Notice the main level or threat is just a little bit of snow across Nevada and northern Utah, spreading into Colorado by tomorrow. Tomorrow. But again, the amounts of snow falling from this are going to be pretty insignificant. The main news story, pretty chilly towards the kind of central western areas here, but then as you get towards the coastal areas, really all of California, Arizona, it's going to be a bit warmer. And again, no real precipitation or activity till maybe at earliest midweek next week. And by then, I will obviously have more videos for you guys made. And again, really nothing too incredible. And if you were to take a look at the 2-meter temperature anomaly, it does seem that the warmest areas, you know, compared to average, will be across the coastal areas and into southern U.S. and northern Mexico. But the coldest area will the coldest air will stay across Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon. Not really far towards the north, and you can see maybe even further out to the southwest as the rest of the United States gets plunged into barbaric cold air, which seems more and more likely. The southwest could be, kind of a little tease for everyone else, with temperatures well into the 70s and 60s across, the large metros of LA and what's not. I mean, this looks very nice weather. And obviously you can see the cold air out on the outskirts here. In terms of, watches for both of you guys, or just for the Southwest, really nothing too significant. Right now there are some freeze watches, but those are mainly for the short term. Okay, let's now move on into the north central United States. This is obviously a region where I'll have to spend a lot more time on, as we have a lot more activity to talk about and a lot more potentially dangerous cold in the long term. So, we're starting to get a little bit behind this system because, well, as much as I want to talk about the system, I also want to give you a brief long-range outlook. So right now, currently, again, we do have the activity going on, obviously. Notice this is what it currently looks like. We're kind of in between two phases. Notice the first wave of the storm, the first blizzard, if you will, the first snow, which, by the way, some of these snowfall amounts, they're still obviously getting added onto. This may not look significant, but some of these snowfall rates here are definitely still approaching at least half an inch to an inch per hour. The snowfall amounts are pretty significant. Obviously, they're not fully in yet. You can see a lot of the shorter reports, or the ones that are, 4 inches, are from 10 a.m. today, so probably not much additional snow, but there was some that were literally from still yesterday. And again, because of how this blizzard was oriented with the banding, there were quite a bit of differences. Some areas getting a lot, and some areas just a little bit over, not getting much. But there were quite a bit of substantial amounts. And again, these amounts will be added to, especially across Minnesota and north and eastern North Dakota, and even portions of South Dakota. So it's not over, guys. It's not over. And you can see that's why all the warnings, all the blizzard warnings are still up. Let me start tracking this out for you guys using the HRRR model. Again, this is a model that is really accurate. I like it. It goes out to 48 hours every 6 hours, not every hour, unfortunately, but often enough to where this is definitely a useful tool. So notice that right now, this is a few hours old, this data. It came out at 1 p.m., but relatively not much has changed since then. The biggest change, I would say, has happened over the overnight hours. And if you recall, yesterday specifically, I was saying that cities like Minneapolis, southern Minnesota, into southern Wisconsin could be getting in on a lot more snowfall than what the National Weather Service or much of the mainstream kind of calling was for. And that is because the models were changing. And if you recall, I yesterday showed you that European model, the one that came out at 6 o'clock, and it showed that sudden shift towards the south, and that has continued, right? And now it seems that it's going to be likely, and as a result, the National Weather Service has expanded a lot of these warnings well into Minneapolis city itself, much further into Wisconsin, and now even into northern Iowa. There are advisories, and into southern Wisconsin, and there's even talks of snow potentially across western Illinois. So this is there's some pretty significant changes here. Notice as I play this out through the evening hours, 8, 9, 10. You may be watching this video around this time frame, right? Especially across these areas, because this is where usually I get a lot of my views from, around the time frame, the hour or two after I upload the video. And you can see that's what we do have is obviously heavy rain further south, especially across Illinois. But notice that a lot of this starts resurging back into the cold air. And additionally, because of how marginal the temperatures are here in my area, where we're going to probably stay all rain, we're still at very cold temperature, 37. So further out west, it's very close to being freezing. And because of how heavily this precipitation is falling, just like how during a thunderstorm you get cool air because of how it downpours, and kind of the outflow from the thunderstorm, it's the same effect here. Not as significant, but it could decrease those temperatures from 36 down to 32, 33, and produce snow. And that's exactly what happens. Now, models like this and guiding, numerical models like the HER and all the models that I show you here are notoriously inaccurate in showing this type of dynamic cooling transition. What I mean by that, there definitely will be some occurring, but whether or not it will be further north or south or east or west of what they're showing is kind of a guessing game. And the point is that all indications are showing that there could be quite a bit more snow than previously thought across southern Wisconsin. You can see into Iowa. So this starts off as rain, but by midnight tonight, this is what it looks like. This is completely different from what the models were showing even a few days ago. And notice that we have much of Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, portions of even Illinois getting in on this snowfall. And notice as this heads into cities like Minneapolis, if you recall, this line right here, yesterday, this kind of snow versus nothing line was further up north yesterday, pretty much avoiding cities like Minneapolis. Instead, it's much further towards the south. So if you live across southern Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, you're going to see more snow out of this. If you live across southern Minnesota, you're going to see more snow out of this. If you live across Minneapolis, you're going to see a lot more snow out of this, potentially 4 to 5, 6 inches. Northern Wisconsin, you're unchanged. Northern Michigan, you're still going to see a lot of snow. And look, back into the upper kind of Minnesota area where there's already over a foot of snow on the ground, in some areas even more, you're going to see another 6 to 12 inches of snow, even into the Dakota, South Dakota, into Iowa, Des Moines City. You're going to pick up a few inches out of this. And while this is going to start off as rain for some areas, Madison, Wisconsin, let's say, you're going to be seeing rain tonight in the evening, 10, 11. You're like, what was this MBGC guy talking about? You're saying that there might be snow. He's obviously inaccurate. Well, the thing is, it's going to start off as rain, but within an hour or two, it could transition to some very heavy, wet snowfall. It will be slushy, but because of how heavily it will be falling, potentially 1 to 3 inches of snow per hour, it's going to overcome those marginal temperatures and start accumulating, right? So it's going to be wet, and I advise people that can, early tomorrow in the morning, get rid of this snow as quick as possible off areas that you don't want it to stick to, because this snow is going to be wet. And it's not going to warm up back up behind this. It's going to become very, very cold. You can see the cold winds sweep in, so it's going to freeze. It's going to become like rock solid. That's what always happens with such events. And it looks as if long range looks cold. So get rid of this stuff because it'll be hard to get rid of once it's frozen. Now, obviously, if it's snowing at 2 a.m., you're not going to be crazy and do that. But, for those that can, do so. Do note, as this spreads into Michigan, the mainland portion of Michigan, there will be some snow, obviously some sleet as well. And as it spreads into southern Canada, again, into Manitoba, there will be some additional snow out of this. And, the winds continue, and we see kind of the second phase of this blizzard. And you can see the snow stretches even into Illinois, into Indiana, into Michigan. Now, by the time things are all said and done, for the most part, there still will be some areas on Friday seeing some snowfall, right? By the time things are all said and done, the total snowfall additional will be, you could see, quite significant. So you could add even up to 10 to 9 inches across portions of North Dakota, where there's already 12, 14 inches. That could lead to amounts well over 2 feet of, getting well over 20 inches, close to 2 feet of snow. There definitely will be some amounts that are close to 2 feet there, if not more. So, there's still more snow coming along the way. Look at that right there near, the arrowhead of Minnesota. Again, the area's right close to the Superior. You're going to get that lake enhancement. You could see an additional 2 feet of snow. Easy. So that is definitely that. And the temperatures after this will be chilly. So that is the north central United States. I could show you the GFS just to show you what happens after the 48 hours kind of get through. So notice Friday still a showery, blustery day, mainly frozen for a good portion of the north central United States, if not just all of it. But do notice that later on the cold air sticks again. So as I mentioned, this is not going to melt away, and it looks as if there could be another big system coming in on near Christmas. So that is that. A lot of folks could be seeing a white Christmas this year. That is definitely something that is interesting. All right. I basically just want to show you that model because her model, I believe, is the most accurate there. I can show you some of the National Weather Service watches and warnings. So notice yesterday when I was recording this video, Minneapolis was under a winter weather advisory. Maybe a few inches, maybe 1 to 2 of slush accumulations were called for. Tonight, that has changed quite significantly. Notice 2 to 4 tonight, 1 to 3 tomorrow. I would not be surprised if areas across Minneapolis could, end up with, close to 7 inches of snow, over half a foot. Quite a change from yesterday. Again, southern Wisconsin, even southern Minnesota. Yesterday, potentially we're going to get less than half half an inch. I recall clicking on an area near Mankato, and that's what showed up. Now, if you click on this, you won't be seeing most likely half a foot of snow, but definitely several inches. You could see 2 to 4, 1 to 2, and actually the National Weather Service says if this overperforms, you could get 6 inches. So there you go. This is how fast, sometimes stuff changes. Across Wisconsin, you'll also be seeing a bit more snow than previously anticipated. Again, as I said, Madison, you're going to start off as rain, but then look, 2 to 4 inches of snow. It's going to fall heavily and quickly. And again, further south, mainly rain. So let's now move on to the South Central United States, as this is another area that we kind of have to talk about. Not as much as, say, the last few days, because a lot of this severe weather has already kind of moved forward. But let's take a glance at this using the HER model again. So let's take a glance, go back to the 18Z model run. So 6 p.m. when I'm kind of recording this, notice that we do have the bulk of Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. You guys are done with this. However, as we get towards the Mississippi River, things really pick up. Obviously, across southern Missouri, into Arkansas, into Tennessee, central Illinois, you guys will continue seeing some pretty heavy rainfall. The main area of concern is southern Mississippi and southeastern Louisiana and Georgia, Alabama, and, well, eventually into Georgia. Right now is when we have the worst of the severe weather going on. So if you're watching this video 7, 8, 9, and you live across the deep south, thanks for watching my video, but honestly, you're probably better off listening to something like Ryan Hall, y'all's weather channel, as he is live streaming the severe weather event. Stay tuned to your local National Weather Service, because I'm here just to provide you a brief overview, but you can see these storms will stay strong well into the overnight hours. Obviously, New Orleans, by the time 8, 9, 10 rolls along, you're done, but still, Panhandle of Florida, into eastern portions of Mississippi, Alabama, you guys are still dealing with this severe weather threat well into the overnight hours. By tomorrow, 3, 4, we should be done, but again, right now, we do have kind of the worst going on, and I don't know if I showed you this, but there is a moderate issued for severe thunderstorms, so that is also a change. Again, we were kind of speculating whether or not it will be issued, and I'm not really surprised that it was. And again, the biggest threat is tornadoes, unfortunately, not wind, not hail. While those things are obviously dangerous, the tornadoes are the worst, and you can see it's pretty significant into mainly eastern Mississippi, southeastern Mississippi, and southwestern Alabama. So again, by the time today, tomorrow, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, it will be done for the most part, thank goodness. But again, if you're watching this video and you live across the deep south, mainly these areas in the next few hours, I would advise you to obviously, thanks for watching this video again, but you really shouldn't be on here, as you're better off probably watching different sources of weather, and especially the National Weather Service, keeping up to date with that, because I'm not here to give you guys, I don't have the software or the skills to predict individual thunderstorms like that. So that is definitely something I want to let you know. If you live further west, again, Texas, Kansas, you may think that boring weather's coming. I would advise you to skip to the long-range portion of the video. I'll talk about a potential snow system and a potential activity in long range. I do want to say that there's going to be a lot more cold air moving into this area after this system. So notice, still 40s, 50s. That's already marginally cooler than it was. But as you get further and further out, you can see that 32-degree line sags further and further south each and every day. And around Christmas time, there could be some really, really cold air moving into here, potentially providing some decent snow chances. All right, let's move on now to the northeastern United States. This is an area where we have really not even started this system yet. It's remarkable. I mean, again, I've obviously tracked at this point hundreds of storms throughout my little hobbyist career here on YouTube, but there are really few systems that I remember being as prolonged as this one. Quite frankly, I don't even know if there is one that beats this one out. I mean, we started talking about this across the Northwest, the West, on Monday of, I think it's been already almost a week. Incredible, and it'll be at least 3 to 4 more days. So, sorry about that. It was kind of hard to fathom this. But again, a lot of these areas are still dry for now. By tomorrow in the early morning hours, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, you're going to start seeing precipitation mainly in the form of rain. However, as you get towards Pennsylvania, more stubborn cold air shows up. So cities just like Pittsburgh and into central, Pittsburgh will be on a cusp of that rain and snow, but State College, Pennsylvania, into potentially Allenstown, a little bit more of that ice and snow. Notice this thing looks like if it's going to break up and not provide anything, right? And this is again 9 a.m., 10 a.m. We have mainly snow and rain occurring across these areas. By the way, this ice threat, there are ice storm warnings. Some of it could be pretty significant, especially across southern Pennsylvania and extreme areas of Maryland, West Virginia, and northern Virginia. However, as this situation goes on, it eventually transitions into sleet and then snow. So it's not going to be, a sleet, freezing rain into rain. It's going to be the opposite, into snow, which is quite unique, especially given the fact that this is going to be coming from the south, this precip. But notice by tomorrow, around noontime, most of these areas are going to be seeing quite a bit of snow, and this includes cities like Toronto. So right across Canada, you're going to be more of a sloppy mix, nothing significant, I would say, in terms of accumulations, but, the sleet and ice and snow that will fall will definitely cause travel issues, because you don't need a lot for that to become slippery and whatever, and whatnot. Notice, as soon as this thing starts looking like if it's going to fall apart, we see an intensification of a low pressure off the east coast. This is where we start seeing some heavier rainfall across the areas that we'll be seeing rain, which again is most of New Jersey, most of the coastal areas. We start seeing some more rain mixing into some areas of southeastern Pennsylvania as this low pressure nudges in here. But what we do start seeing is some pretty heavy snowfall rates across upstate New York, into Vermont, into New Hampshire. Know this, southern Canada, southeastern Canada, you guys are pretty much completely snow, and you'll be seeing some pretty good heavy rates out of this. And as this system tracks through the northeast, you could see the snowfall rates really starting to pick up, especially across, again, upstate New York, potentially into Pennsylvania as well, into Vermont, New Hampshire, and this is how far the model takes us. It doesn't take us any further out than Friday at 12 p.m. In terms of total snowfall through this time frame, you could see that it's going to be pretty significant. Some of these amounts may be just a little bit too high, honestly, but I would not be surprised to see some localized amounts over a foot across some of these areas, across Pennsylvania, the higher elevations into New York, and you could see across southeastern Canada also seeing quite a bit of that snowfall. Again, mainly north of Toronto here on the other side of Lake Ontario, but let's glance at a model that takes us a little bit further out, because the story is not done here. As this system intensifies, you can see the GFS tries keeping some of this snowfall a bit closer towards the shore. Again, that's maybe a bit more of a GFS type scenario, because the other models don't really agree with that. But as this thing rolls up, again, it's not a massive nor'easter, but it is one. It's not even really a nor'easter, honestly. It's just going to be a coastal system that does provide quite a bit of snow for, you could see, eventually into Massachusetts, continuing into southern Canada, the large metropolitans of Ottawa, Quebec, Montreal. You're going to be seeing snow. Toronto, you're mainly out of this by late Friday. But as this thing moves up into Maine, you can see most of Maine staying as snow, and this thing continues. So Saturday will be a really poor day for travel across, Friday and Saturday across, especially these areas, these northern areas of kind of the metros here across Canada, and these the kind of Maine and New Hampshire, Vermont areas. But notice that even though by Saturday 6 p.m. It's mainly done, I would say, other than cities like Quebec maybe, and then Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire still picking up that snow, and then it's fully done by Sunday. So in terms of total snowfall, by the time this thing is all said and done, which again is going to be by Monday potentially, which, goodness, this thing's, the longevity of this thing's incredible. It's going to look something like this. So again, find your location, find your spot. Again, don't take this to heart. The GFS is a little bit inaccurate here. I think the European has a better scenario with this, which is why I want to show you the Northeast using the European model here now. And let me show you it. I'll play it out for you as well. So again, today and into tomorrow, the main threat is across that ice. Across Pennsylvania, does convert into snow. Then that potentially starts converting into a little bit of rain, especially across southeastern sections of Pennsylvania. Upstate New York starts getting to that snowfall by tomorrow midday. Toronto, you're going to see the peak activity probably tomorrow during the day. By even the evening hours, this thing is kind of starting to wrap up across your areas. New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, you guys are unfortunately rain for the snow lovers. There will be quite a bit of this rain, though. You can see some even scattered thunderstorms, nothing severe, maybe just a few rumbles of thunder. Notice Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York, and into southeastern Canada, this thing is going to be producing mainly snow as this rides through Friday and into the day on Saturday, potentially providing some really heavy snowfall amounts there as this thing rides up through Maine. Again, by Sunday and into Monday, this thing looks finally all said and done. According to the European, which I would say these amounts are probably a little bit more accurate than what the GFS model shows, this is the snow that could be done with, that could be left behind. So again, some of these amounts here could be limited and, maybe inaccurate because of that rain snow, hard to predict transition. Notice Pittsburgh around an inch and a half, so nothing too significant for you guys. Across southeastern Canada, some of these amounts are probably a bit underdone because assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, this snow will be falling at slightly cooler temperatures than what we'd be normally, looking at for 10-to-1 ratio. So you can multiply the 7, the 9, the, even, these numbers by around 1.5. And then further south here, 27 inches across western Massachusetts is very unlikely, and that's assuming a 10-to-1 ratio because it's going to be probably warmer than what you'd see during a 10-to-1 ratio. This could be falling at a 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 ratio. You could divide those, or you could just multiply those 27 by 0.7 or 0.8, and you'll get maybe a more realistic scenario. So that 27 would quickly turn into an 18, 19 inch amount, which is still a lot, but I'm even skeptical about those, honestly, those high such amounts. And notice Vermont, New Hampshire, we have significant snow into Maine and southeastern Canada as well. And again, the further north you get, you can multiply these numbers by a higher ratio. So that's the Northeast. And again, I do want to show you, across again, Pennsylvania, we are worried about that potentially ice threat. And again, this isn't all of Pennsylvania, but further south and east where this kind of initially occurs. So you can see Johnstown right here, just east of Alatoona. You guys are under ice storm warning, and you can see that includes a 1/10 of an inch of ice, and then tomorrow from a 1/10 to 2/10. May not look a lot, and honestly, in terms of a massive ice storm, this is probably going to be one. But this, 3/10 of an inch of ice, if this forecast comes true at its maximum, that's still a lot. That could obviously cripple power lines and whatnot, but the travel is what I'm more concerned about. You don't need a lot of ice. All you need is a thin little glaze to produce some, horrendous traveling conditions. And then that will transition into snow. Potentially that snow covers that ice, making it even worse, and yeah, a mess. Further north, again, State College, Lock Haven, Williamsport, you guys are going to be a lot cleaner. You're not going to see as much ice and more snow, 2 to 4 inches, 1 to 2 inches. Kind of sloppy, but it's going to be snow nonetheless. And notice across upstate New York, we have a lot of areas still under watches, some advisories, chaos, to say the least. Which is why the National Weather Service is probably better for you guys to look at than what I can give you here, because I only have one mouth and I can only forecast for so many areas. And you can see the total snowfall forecast here. Obviously some areas seeing a lot, and then some just a little bit over, not that much. I'm assuming this is probably some lower elevated areas, which is why some of that will be staying as rain a bit longer. All right, so that is that. Let's move on to the southeast. Again, the southeastern United States, you guys are still mainly under the gun for a lot of this moisture here. Again, if you live across Georgia, Alabama, you guys are probably seeing some sort of a rainfall event ongoing right now. Again, this will probably be slowing down in terms of the severity of these storms, because as I was showing for the south central United States, folks, we do have a moderate of severe weather issued for the southeast here. Again, tomorrow there still will be some severe weather possible across Florida and extreme southeastern Georgia and southern Alabama, and maybe into southeastern South Carolina. This will be mainly in the form of wind, hail, some tornado threat, yes, but again, it will be much more limited than what we're seeing today. Not as impressive. Let's go to the HER model and time this out for you guys. So let's now switch to the regions of the southeastern United States and show you this. Notice that by 6 p.m., which is really where we are right now, 6, 7, 8, this thing's mainly down to Mississippi by the time, 9, 10 rolls around, but it's still going into Alabama, into Florida. It's just beginning around 10 p.m., 11 p.m. It's still going into Georgia, mainly in the form of strong thunderstorms, not necessarily severe, strong thunderstorms and heavy rain. Further south, they definitely will be severe. These definitely storms will be ones that pack a punch, especially as it stretches into Florida. And you can see this stretches into the Carolinas tomorrow, this rainfall, but it begins as early as, again, tonight. And by the time they're done with the Carolinas, this rain on Thursday during the day, this thing is still going through much of Florida. You can see through Tampa right there, through Fort Lauderdale. And then it eventually peters out before reaching extreme southern Florida. So the southeast is going to be a bit quicker done with this compared to, say, the northeast and the north central United States, which is odd given the fact that it's kind of further east than the north. But that's this system. It's let's just say a chaotic one, to say the least. So most of the southeast area, you guys are going to be done by the time it's tomorrow late in the afternoon in terms of the severe weather and the rain. However, till that time comes, we still have many areas that could pick up quite a bit of rain, in some areas quite some significant rain. And you can see into Florida, there's some decent pockets of probably 2, 3, 4 inches that will occur. You can see south of Delaware there, just southern Delaware, southern Maryland, Virginia, also picking up quite a bit of rain here as that kind of interacts with a strengthening low pressure system. Beyond this, I do want to say for you guys living here, it's going to get colder. It's going to get a lot chillier compared to what you've been seeing. And if you were to take a look at the 2-meter temperature shaded, the past few days, especially out ahead of the system, have been very nice. Look at that, 70s across Georgia, Mississippi, southern sections of those states, about 60s and 50s. further north. But after that cold front, you can see the abrupt transition. At first, not too bad, but then you can see each day kind of following that, the cold air sinks further and further and further south. Again, you won't be seeing, freezing temperatures across Florida, but say Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, you definitely could be. And now I kind of want to extend this to a longer range forecast, and looking at a model like the GFS, I want to show you what could come later on. So notice that cold air continues sagging further into the southeast, and we see a little bit of a break. Thank goodness we don't see as much activity. We'll still see some stuff you could see across extreme southeast and into the northern portions of North Dakota. We see some sort of activity, or maybe some sort of a system trying to make its way across the early portion of next week. A minor one, but could provide some snow into Kansas City, maybe Wichita, Topeka, Des Moines, Chicago, Detroit. And then we see a larger system. Out ahead of this giant barbaric intrusion of cold air, we see a system. And this is where models start really disagreeing with each other. Some, like the GFS, show some sort of a Midwest system combined with some sort of maybe Northeast monster. GFS is one proponent of that, or mainly its family, but you can see the cold air left behind it is going to be just incredible. And let me show you some of these anomalies, because this really just gives picture visualization to this. So again, following this system, cold air, but what comes after that second one next week is really what's going to be incredible. And look at that, incredible. Portions of in the South Dakota and Montana could be reaching all-time, record lows in terms of the cold temperatures. Look at the southeast. If you think you're going to be spared by this, no, you're not. You're going to be seeing freezing temperatures all the way down to the Gulf. It would not be surprised to see maybe even some ice forming, across maybe even the ocean itself, across, the beach lines. I mean, it's going to be down, 20 degrees, 19, the single digits, the teens across cities like New Orleans and whatnot. It's going to be cold. This isn't something that occurs often, if not rarely at all, especially at around, December. And this thing continues. You could see that cold air pretty much affecting everywhere east of, excluding the Southwest maybe. And then following that, it obviously moderates, but it doesn't look like there will be a massive warm-up for the eastern United States. Some warm air filtering in, but it's going to be cold. And again, whether or not we see a massive storm and where that exactly occurs will be, let's just say, interesting. So you can see the GFS didn't really show snow much further south, but the Canadian shows that system. You can see shows snow across Tennessee, maybe into northern Alabama, Mississippi. Not really into Texas according to this, but it shows a massive nor'easter there. But again, it's still a lot of stuff that we have to kind of decipher here, and the models are still rather disagreeing on this. And if we go to the European model and focus on the national view of this, and we take a look at the precipitation type and rate. So let me just show you what I did with the GFS, but with the European. Again, it has its own interpretation. So there's that system. We're done with it, let's just say. And by the time we get into, again, early next week, there could be some sort of a system in the first part of the week. We'll have to see, but it seems like if there will be more moisture and introduction into a bigger system later next week, right before Christmas. And you can see this one's also interesting, to say the least. The European shows more of a, again, potentially another blizzard across the Midwest. Maybe not as significant in terms of snowfall, but you can see those winds are definitely there. A lot of moisture up here, some sort of a coastal low developing here, and then maybe, yeah, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. It's chaotic, let's just say that much. And again, extreme cold air looks likely. The European model, some of these temperatures it shows at around, what is this, hour 210 are, is just barbaric. I mean, look at that. Wow. That is cold, and this you could bet that this stretches way down into the south. So yeah, interesting to say the least. And some of these temperatures, goodness, that's gonna be cold. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.